I still remember the sound of the microphone before I remember his words. That soft crackle, that tiny pause where the room went quiet. That was the moment my heart knew something was wrong, even before my mind could catch up. I was standing at the front of the hall, holding my bouquet with shaking hands. White roses, my mother's favorite. The lights were warm, the music had just faded. Everyone we loved was there, smiling, waiting for us to say, "I do." Then he cleared his throat. "I can't do this," he said. At first I smiled, not because I was happy, but because shock can make you do strange things. I thought maybe it was a joke, a nervous laugh, something we would laugh about later. But he didn't laugh. He stepped back, not away from the microphone, away from me. "I'm ending this wedding," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I won't marry a woman who lies." The room went silent. No gasps, no whispers, just silence so heavy it felt like it was sitting on my chest. I looked at him, searching his face for confusion, for fear, for love, but his eyes were cold, focused, like he had practiced this moment. People began to turn in their seats. My aunt in the second row, my best friend near the aisle, my mother frozen, her hands clasped together like she was praying without words. I wanted to speak. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but my throat closed up. All I could hear was my heartbeat. "I won't explain everything," he continued, "but she knows what she did." And just like that, he handed the microphone back, turned around, and walked away. I didn't chase him, not because I was strong, but because my legs would not move. I stood there in my wedding dress while the doors closed behind him. I stood there while people slowly stood up, unsure of what to do. I stood there while my life split into a before and an after. Someone touched my arm. I think it was my sister. "Baby," she whispered, but I couldn't hear anything else. What hurt the most was not the ending. It was the way he ended it. Public, sharp, like he wanted to break me in front of witnesses. What he didn't know was this. He thought I was hiding something, but the truth was I was the only one in that room who knew the whole story, and one day I would finally tell it. Before that day in the wedding hall, there was a quieter life, a softer one, the kind of life that grows slowly, without drama, without warning signs you know how to read. I met him 3 years before the wedding. It was at a small family cookout. Nothing fancy, just folding chairs, grilled food, and laughter drifting through the air. He stood near the fence, smiling like he didn't quite know where he belonged yet. He was gentle in the beginning, that kind of gentle that listens more than it talks. He remembered little things about me, my favorite tea, how I liked my eggs, how I got quiet when something bothered me. When he asked me out, it felt easy to say yes. No pressure, no rush, just 2 people walking side by side, learning each other one day at a time. My family loved him, especially my mother. She said, "That man looks at you like he's grateful." And for a long time, I believed that was true. We didn't fight much. When we disagreed, we talked. Sometimes we went quiet, but we always came back to the table. I thought that meant we were strong. The proposal came on a rainy evening, nothing public, just the 2 of us in the living room. He got down on one knee while the rain tapped gently against the window. "Will you marry me?" he asked, voice shaking. I said yes without hesitation. I didn't know then that hesitation can sometimes be a form of wisdom. After that, things moved fast. Venue booked, dress chosen, invitations sent. Every step forward felt like it locked the future in place. But slowly, small changes began to show. He started asking questions that felt strange, careful questions, questions that sounded simple but carried weight. "Is there anything I should know before we get married?" he asked one night. I looked at him and answered honestly. "No," I said. because the thing I was holding inside wasn't a lie, it was a truth I hadn't yet learned how to say out loud. He grew distant after that, not cold, just quiet, like his mind was always somewhere else. Sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, like he was searching for proof of something, or maybe preparing himself for something. I asked him once, "Are you okay?" He smiled and said, "Just wetting nerves." I wanted to believe him, so I did. Looking back now, I see the signs, the pauses, the silence, the way love can shift without making a sound. But love doesn't always leave loudly. Sometimes it waits, sometimes it plans, and sometimes it chooses the worst possible moment to walk away. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real-life stories reach the people who need them most. After we got engaged, people treated me like I was already a wife. They asked about the house, the children we might have one day, the future we were supposed to build together. I smiled through those conversations. I nodded. I played my part well. But inside our home, something had shifted. Not enough to point at, not enough to accuse, just enough to feel. He stopped coming to bed at the same time as me, said he had work to finish, emails to answer, things that could not wait. I would lie there listening to the hum of the house, the refrigerator clicking, the clock ticking, wondering why loneliness could exist even when someone was in the next room. When I asked him if something was wrong, he always answered the same way. "I'm fine," he said, but his eyes never met mine. One evening, while I cooked dinner, he stood in the doorway watching me, not smiling, not speaking, just watching. "You ever feel like the past follows people?" he asked. I paused, holding the spoon mid-air. "Sometimes," I said, carefully. "Why?" He shrugged. "No reason." But the question stayed in the air between us, heavier than the smell of food. I felt like I was being measured, judged by something I didn't even know was on trial. My friends noticed it before I admitted it to myself. They said he seemed distracted, short-tempered, always on his phone. I defended him. "He's just stressed," I said, because admitting fear feels worse than denying truth. Then came the night he went through my things. I wasn't angry at first, just surprised. I found the drawer open, papers slightly moved, a box placed back but not the way I left it. When I asked him about it, he didn't deny it. "I needed to be sure," he said. "Sure of what?" I asked. "That you're who you say you are." That hurt more than yelling ever could, because trust isn't loud when it breaks. It's quiet. It leaves you standing alone with questions. I wanted to explain, to tell him the part of my life I had locked away, not out of shame, but out of fear of being misunderstood. But every time I opened my mouth, the words felt wrong, too big, too heavy. So I waited. I told myself I would find the right moment, the right time, the right way. But time does not wait for courage. The closer we got to the wedding day, the farther away he seemed. He smiled in public, played the perfect groom. At home, he was a stranger learning how to leave without packing a bag. I didn't know then that silence can make decisions all on its own, that when truth is delayed, someone else may tell a version of it for you, and sometimes they choose the stage before you choose your voice. There was a truth about me I had never told him, not because I wanted to deceive him, but because I didn't know how to say it without losing everything. Before I met him, I had been married once before. It wasn't a long marriage. It wasn't a happy one either. It was quiet, heavy, and full of lessons I learned the hard way. When it ended, I walked away with more scars than memories. Legal papers, closed doors, and a deep fear of being judged for something I survived, not something I chose. In my heart, I told myself that past was over, that it didn't define me anymore. I built a new life, a new name in the world, a new sense of self. When I met him, I didn't hide my pain, but I didn't open every door either. Some rooms felt safer locked. I planned to tell him, I really did, after the engagement, before the wedding, when things felt calm enough to hold the truth without breaking. But calm never came. Instead, doubt crept in, questions he never fully asked, silence that spoke louder than honesty. One night, just weeks before the wedding, he finally said it. "I found something," he told me. My chest tightened. "What did you find?" "Court records," he said. "Another last name." I sat down slowly. The floor felt unsteady beneath me. "I was going to tell you," I whispered. "When?" he asked. "At the altar?" That's when I saw it. Not hurt, not confusion, but humiliation. He wasn't angry that I had a past. He was angry that I didn't confess it on his timeline. "I needed to know everything," he said, "before I stand in front of people and call you my wife." I wanted to explain that survival doesn't always come with announcements, that healing is not a performance, but the words fell apart in my mouth. He didn't shout, he didn't cry, he just shut down. "I'll think about it," he said, and that was worse than any argument. After that, we moved forward like nothing had happened. Wedding plans continued, smiles returned in public, but something inside him hardened. What he didn't tell me was this: he had already decided how he would handle the truth, not in private, not with grace, but in front of everyone. He believed that exposing me would protect his pride, that humiliation would balance the scale. He never considered that silence can be a shield, not a lie, that some stories are told slowly because they are heavy to carry. As the wedding day came closer, I sensed the danger, but I didn't imagine cruelty. I thought love would soften him. I was wrong. If this story speaks to your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these stories find voices in quiet places. The morning of the wedding arrived quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that makes your chest feel tight for no clear reason. I sat in front of the mirror while the makeup artist worked on my face. She talked about the weather, about how beautiful the day was going to be. I nodded and smiled, watching a woman I barely recognized look back at me. He didn't text me that morning. No, "good luck." No, "I love you." I told myself he was nervous. Men get quiet before big moments, people say. When I stepped into my dress, the room felt heavy. My mother helped fasten the back. Her hands trembled just a little. "You okay, baby?" she asked. "I am," I said, but even then, my voice sounded far away. At the venue, everything looked perfect. White chairs, soft music, sunlight pouring in like a blessing. He stood at the front when I walked down the aisle. His face was calm, too calm. I searched his eyes for comfort, for reassurance, for love. I found none. The officiant spoke. Guests smiled. Cameras clicked softly. Then came the moment, the microphone, the pause, the breath he took before choosing damage. When he spoke, he didn't look at me. He looked at the crowd. "I can't marry her," he said, "because she lied about who she is." My name wasn't enough. My love wasn't enough. My humanity wasn't enough. People shifted in their seats. Some gasped. Some stared at me like they were waiting for a confession. I felt exposed, not because of my past, but because my present was being stripped away without my consent. I could have shouted. I could have defended myself. I could have told the truth right there. But something stronger than anger held me still. Dignity. I stood there in silence while he walked away. I let him take his version of the story with him. What he didn't know was that truth does not disappear when it is silenced. It waits. As the doors closed behind him, I finally lifted my head. I looked at the people who mattered, my family, my friends, the ones who knew my heart. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. He ended the wedding to destroy me, to make me small, to make himself feel clean. But he gave me something too. Time. Time to speak when I was ready. Time to heal without begging for acceptance. Time to tell my story on my terms. That day was not the end of my life. It was the end of my silence. And what came next, he never expected. After the wedding ended, the world didn't stop. Cars still passed by. The sun still moved across the sky. But my life felt like it had been placed on pause. For days, I stayed inside. I let the phone ring. I let messages pile up unanswered. I needed silence to understand what had happened to me. My mother sat with me most evenings. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. She never asked me to explain myself. One night, she reached for my hand and said softly, "You don't owe anyone your pain." That's when I realized how much of my life I had spent explaining my strength, explaining my survival, explaining why I deserved love. A week later, he called. I stared at his name on the screen for a long time before answering. "I didn't mean to hurt you like that," he said. His voice sounded tired. Not sorry, just tired. "You chose to hurt me," I replied calmly, "and you chose an audience." He sighed. I panicked. I felt embarrassed. I closed my eyes. "You were embarrassed," I said, "so you tried to humiliate me." He was quiet after that. "I need people to know the truth," he finally said. "That's the thing," I told him. "You needed control, not truth." For the first time, I didn't feel small during that conversation. I felt steady, like my feet were finally planted on solid ground. A few days later, I wrote a letter, not to him, to myself. I wrote about the woman I had been, the mistakes I made, the courage it took to leave a life that was hurting me, the strength it took to start again. Then I shared my story, not with everyone, just with the people who mattered. I told them about my first marriage, about why it ended, about how it shaped me but did not define me. And something beautiful happened. No one turned away. Instead, they leaned closer. I realized then that shame only grows in darkness, but truth, when spoken with calm and honesty, brings light. He never apologized the way I needed, but I stopped waiting for that. Closure doesn't always come from the person who hurt you. Sometimes it comes from choosing peace over explanation. The day I finally spoke, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't accuse. I simply told my story, and in doing so, I took my power back. If this story has touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps real voices be heard. Time has a way of softening the sharpest moments, not by erasing them, but by teaching you how to carry them without bleeding. Weeks passed, then months. I slowly returned to life. Work, family dinners, quiet mornings with coffee and prayer. People stopped whispering when I entered rooms. The story faded for them, but not for him. One afternoon, he showed up at my door without calling. I stood there for a moment, hand on the knob, deciding who I wanted to be. I opened the door. He looked different, not broken, just unsettled. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded and stepped aside. We sat across from each other like strangers who shared memories neither knew how to name. "I lost people because of what I did," he said. "They don't look at me the same anymore." I listened quietly, not with anger, but with clarity. "You thought exposing everything would make you feel right," he continued, "but it didn't." I took a slow breath. "Because truth without compassion becomes cruelty," I said. He looked down at his hands. "I didn't understand your past," he admitted. "I thought it threatened me." "That was never my job to fix," I replied gently. He finally looked up. "I need to tell you something." I waited. "The reason I reacted the way I did," he said, "is because I was afraid people would judge me for loving someone with a history." There it was. Not betrayal, not morality, fear of perception. "I loved you," he said, "but I loved their approval more." The room felt still after that, like it was waiting to see what I would do with the truth. "I already knew that," I said softly. He looked surprised. "When you chose the crowd over me," I continued, "you told me everything I needed to know." He asked if we could try again, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet request. I shook my head. "I forgave you," I said, "but forgiveness is not the same as return." He nodded slowly, like someone finally understanding a lesson too late. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. "The problem was never you," he said. "I know," I replied. After he left, I sat in the quiet for a long time, not grieving, not angry, free. Because sometimes the truth someone wasn't ready for is that you healed without them. Now, when I look back at that day, it no longer feels sharp. It feels distant, like a memory I can hold without my hands shaking. I still remember the wedding dress, the flowers, the silence after he walked away. But those images no longer define me. What defines me is what came after. I learned that dignity is not loud. It doesn't need a microphone or an audience. It lives in how you carry yourself when someone tries to strip you bare. I learned that some people don't fear the truth itself. They fear how the truth will reflect on them. And when that fear is stronger than love, love cannot survive. I also learned something about silence. Silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is wisdom waiting for the right moment to speak. For a long time, I believed I needed to explain my past to be worthy of a future. But healing taught me otherwise. My past is not a stain. It is proof that I survived something hard and chose to live again. It is not something to confess in shame. I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Forgiveness did not erase what he did. It simply released me from carrying it any longer. Today, my life is quieter, not empty, just calm. I wake up without fear. I walk into rooms without shrinking. I love myself without apology. And if love comes again one day, it will not be built on secrecy or fear. It will be built on honesty, compassion, and mutual respect. To anyone listening who has been humiliated in public, misunderstood in private, or punished for surviving something painful, hear me clearly. You do not owe your story to anyone who cannot hold it with care. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away with your head high and your heart intact. The noise fades, the crowd forgets, but the way you choose yourself stays with you forever. And that is where true healing begins. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps more real-life stories find hope and healing. Thank you for listening.